If you please raise your right hand so you may be sworn in. Do you swear the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do all of your vaccine candidates require at least 2 doses to be effective?
John Young from Pfizer. Thank you for the question. So we anticipate that the protocol that we will study in our pivotal trial will use an initial dose plus a booster. So yes, 2 doses.
All right. Is that true for the others, our witnesses?
It's true for Moderna.
It remains to be seen. I'm sorry.
Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, we are earlier in our development. We may have the possibility to evaluate both, but we don't yet know if it'll be 1 or 2.
All right. All right.
From a Merck perspective, Merck selected vaccine candidates that we believe have a reasonable possibility of being single-dose vaccines. That's our hope, but that's unproven at this point in time.
Okay. All right.
So our data suggests that 2 doses are giving a stronger immune response than 1, but until we understand the correlates of immune protection, we don't know ultimately whether 1 will be enough. We'll go with 2 to be sure, but it could end up becoming 1 dose.
Thank you. That's really helpful, I think, for us and for the public to understand that when we talk about having 300 million doses or 30 million doses, we probably should estimate that's half, cut that in half in terms of the number of people that are actually going to be able to get vaccinated, sort of in worst case scenarios is my takeaway of that.
Dosing for 55 and older, it's like the influenza shot. You need the super duper one to be effective. And yet for younger patients, for children, young adults, you don't need that higher dosage. How are you all going to handle this? I can't remember who said they thought they would have to do 2 doses. So maybe the 2-dose companies can answer that.
I can speak for AstraZeneca because I said that we're veering towards.
I don't have a lot of time, so do it quickly.
So we're veering towards 2 doses, and you're absolutely right that different populations may require different schedules. Our first priority is to demonstrate efficacy, and the best way of demonstrating efficacy is maximizing the dose. So we'll almost definitely go with 2 doses, but can then work from that to reduce doses if, for example, the 18 to 55-year-olds need a single dose. But we will start with 2 almost definitely.
Are you the only ones that are anticipating 2 doses? Or is there any?
John Young from Pfizer, we also anticipate that we'll take 2 doses into our pivotal trial. The second dose would be administered 21 days after the first dose. That's when the booster would take place. That's what we've studied in our phase 1 trials to date. And we're going to look to try and find the optimal candidate to take into our phase 3 study so that we end up with a single construct and dosage for both older and younger patients.
And my question for every company is, how will you create a vaccine that is effective for the most vulnerable population? And that is the 60+ population, especially when there's comorbidities. Comparing to the influenza vaccine, it's not very effective for that demographic as well. So how are you going to target the most vulnerable population if you look at the fatalities of COVID-19? Answer that. And then how are you going to deliver it to those? That's another question. But let's talk about how you're going to target that vulnerable population. Ms. Gerdeberg?
Thank you. It's a really important question. And I think at the very beginning of vaccine development, we tend to study vaccines in the people who have the greatest likelihood of responding to the vaccine. But we do need to understand what will happen with these vaccines in older people. That's one of the reasons why I think we're going to ultimately end up with more than one vaccine. The first vaccine might not be the best vaccine for seniors or for children. So we need to have additional studies to really define the value in the highest risk populations and the safety in those populations.
Okay. Mr. Panglis?
It's again a very important question, and during our studies we'll be treating a variety of age groups and vulnerabilities from 5 years old to 70 plus. And so we'll be able to generate data that gives us an indication of who is best responding to the vaccine. As we said previously, the regulators have said they want to see a 50% efficacy level in the broadest population, but it may be that a younger population responds better than an older population. We don't know yet. What we do know with our vaccine is that we do see good immune responses in the elderly, in other diseases that the Oxford group have tried to treat. So we're optimistic that it will work in older adults as well. But we also have additional therapies like our monoclonal antibody programs that will be independent of generating an immune response. And so if you have, let's say, an immune-compromised individual or a person that doesn't respond to a vaccine, we'll be able to treat them with an antibody instead. And then we'll be helping them, basically giving them their immune response without particular therapy.
My time's about out. Let's go to Micaiah.
Yes, so I fully share your perspective that the elderly are an important population, and that's why we are planning to evaluate them in our very first study, so that we can understand what the immune responses are, what does the safety profile look like, and select the appropriate dose and or schedule such that we could evaluate them in our efficacy study as well, because we believe they should be some of the first people to get access to the vaccine. We do have experience with our platform in another respiratory virus, RSV. We have a program targeting the elderly, and we're encouraged by some of the data that we have now been seeing in terms of the immune response looking comparable to what we see in younger adults. So there is a good possibility that we may have a viable vaccine for that population.
Stephen?
Thank you for the question. It's an important question. Two quick answers because I know we're running out of time.
You're out of
Sorry.
time, so please fast.
How much of the material that's used in your individual vaccine or in your product comes from overseas? And I'll start with you, Sir Pangolis.
Thank you very much. So for our US supplies, all of our US supply chain will be coming from the United States.
All of it?
Yes.
What about vials? What about the other things that are used, such as vials or other delivery methods? Anything at all, even packaging?
But to the best of my knowledge, all of the materials that we're using for our US supply are coming from the United States. But I can confirm, I can check that and confirm it for you.
And are you manufacturing the vaccine in the United States? Is that your intention?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay. Dr. DeWiigi?
Yes. So 99% of our materials come from either the US or Europe. And so we have very little that coming out of China. And in terms of how much manufacturing we have in the US, it's roughly half of our supply will be produced in US soil.
And then the other half will be produced in Europe?
Well, there will probably be a number of facilities in order to best support a global supply of our materials.
Any in China?
As far as I know, I'm not aware of that, but these discussions are ongoing.
Okay. Dr. Gerbeny.
Thank you. I'm going to have to get back to you for the record on this. We're prosecuting 2 vaccines, and while generally speaking, Merck's vaccine, and we have several, are very much localized to the United States and a couple of places in Europe, I need to verify the entirety of the supply chain to make sure that I...
Okay, if you could get back to us in writing, I'd appreciate it. Dr. Hogue?
So our manufacturing domestically is at 2 facilities in the United States. The vaccine is made entirely in the United States. Our supply chain includes a number of raw materials, some of which have been sourced internationally, but we work to secure that supply and bring it into depots in advance of needing it for manufacturing to specifically.
Okay, can you define internationally? Does that include China?
I do not believe so, sir, but I think there is a lot from Europe.
I'm sorry, does that include China internationally?
It may include for some of the raw materials, sir, but I don't believe it's a major component. Most of what I was describing was Europe.
Thank you, Jim, for having me, and thank you for your nice comment. Yes, we are very excited since we started Moderna now 8 years ago.
Right now, with more on this news, is Stefan Bancel. He is the CEO of Moderna. And Stefan, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us today. Stefan, it's great to see you again. We talked to you earlier this week, but that was before this news of this grant coming from the government, this award. I just wonder, what does it mean for you to get this kind of money? How much does that add to the speed with which you could try and come up with a vaccine?
Good morning, Becky, and thank you for having me back.
Now with more on the news, Stefan Bancel, CEO of Moderna, and our own Meg Terrell. Stefan, it's good to see you again. We've had a lot of conversations.
Stefan, welcome and thank you for joining. So a robust immune reaction is what we're seeing out of your early phase trials. The next phase underway, how big will it be? How many people will be involved?
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Joining me right now to talk more about all of this is the CEO of Moderna, Stefan Bancel. And Stefan, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.